Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this side event at COP27. The title is Efforts to Pursue Coal Retirement in Southeast Asia, the Current State of Play. I have been warned that there's some sound difficulties, so please just bear with us. This event is presented by the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership, or ETP. It's kindly hosted by the International Development Finance Club, IDFC, and we'd like to say special thanks to AFD for making this happen. So my name is John Cotton. I'm the Senior Program Manager at ETP, and for those of you who aren't aware, is that better? For those of you who aren't aware, the Energy Transition Partnership is a multi-stakeholder platform. We bring together governments and philanthropies. This includes the governments of France, United Kingdom, Germany and Canada, and philanthropies, including the Children's Investment Fund, Yajilara, Sequoia and more. The platform is managed and housed under the United Nations Office for Project Services, or UNOPS. Our members are united in the ambition to accelerate the energy transition in Southeast Asia. So today's event takes the form of a roundtable. We will dive into a discussion on the role of coal retirement in reaching the region's net zero emission goals by mid-century. We'll explore the holistic approach to retire coal and look at the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead on this journey to a future less dependent on coal. So we are privileged and honoured to be joined by some incredible panellists today. We really have the thought leaders in this area, both regionally and globally. So without further ado, please let me introduce, for the welcome address, Ms. Mathilde Borde-Laurent. Mathilde has over 15 years' experience in development finance in the energy, infrastructure and climate sectors. Mathilde graduated as an engineer from both the École Centrale Paris and ENGREF. She joined AFD in 2005, where she managed projects on the energy transition and biodiversity conservation, in particular in Africa. In 2015, she joined AFD's private sector subsidiary, Propaco, and subsequently managed AFD's energy transition activity. Today, she heads a climate and nature team, which gathers 20 specialists providing cross-functional expertise in the fields of climate and biodiversity, which is central to the AFD's mandate. Over to you.
You made it until the end of my bio, which is getting longer. Thank you. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Very sorry for the technicalities. I look at you. Is the sound okay? Yeah? Not too loud, not too... we'll do our best. This is what may be the most difficult in this COP this year. No, it's a real pleasure and personal pleasure really to be with you today, because I have personal links with this initiative, the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership, and it's always a pleasure to be mobilized from time to time to meet with you again. And more importantly, also, it's from my point of view very important to put the focus on what's happening in Southeast Asia. Because the magnitude of the economic growth and related energy consumption is a challenge, as we urgently need to decarbonize these economies. Only one or two figures. In 2020, energy-related greenhouse gas emission in this region was 1.8 million tons of CO2 equivalents. It's supposed to increase by 25% by 2025 only. So this pace of increase is really, of course, unsustainable, and this is known and recognized by the countries of the region. We are all we do all recall the first days of Glasgow, when we all arrived so concerned with what would be the outcome and the ambition of this COP, and where the first day started with Vietnam and Indonesia announcement, notably on net zero, And this gave us the impetus and the momentum to continue in this COP. It was really instrumental, and you had also other emerging economies such as South Africa, notably, who announced the similar, or Nigeria, similar commitment, and to us, you saved the Paris Agreement with this type of commitment. And yet we completely acknowledge how difficult it's going to be, as 75% of your power supply, better like that, is today dependent on coal in the region. Of course, also behind the recognition that this energy transition is necessary for the climate, it's also very important for social reasons, health, air pollution notably, but also because this is where we have to find the great job and the employment, and where we need to make sure that the economy is being and getting more resilient over time, using the opportunity and taking the opportunity of the energy transition notably. So this is the question that the partners of the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership had in mind when they decided to work together and to launch the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership a few years ago now, acknowledging that decision makers will have to undertake sound policy planning and strong political action to materialize this transition and to solve the dilemma of rapid growth and decarbonization that was referring to. And recognizing also that we really all needed to focus and join forces. I mean, all us from the north and the philanthropies that were joining the discussion, but of course all stakeholders also in your countries, and I'm sure you're going to elaborate on that. And therefore it was really important to try to set a different type of partnership, and this is what we've tried to achieve with the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership, which is bringing together civil society, philanthropies, and DFIs like AFD, but also our German friends. And I'm sure you're going to make the full list of all the partners. I may have lost now the name of all the partners which are in DTP, because I know it's growing. This was also so this is still a unique proposition. What's being done with this partnership is really unique. This space of coordination between donors and philanthropies, and certainly to be replicated in other region. The idea is to be able to mobilize the best of this type of funders. The pragmatism and the very pragmatic approach and on the ground and shorter term programs that are typically supported by philanthropies, and also the long term position and work on public policies and long term investment planning and financing of DFIs. Bringing this all together is for sure the value added of this proposal. The ETP has already delivered and is delivering. I'm looking at Sirpa because she's been instrumental in this, notably programs that are helping to support critical investments, such as the design of the new control center of the Java-Bali grid, really critical to allow the penetration of renewable in Indonesia. Such as also other study regarding coal phase-out, notably in Indonesia, which we absolutely need to do to make sure that the moratorium that have been decided will be indeed implemented. There is also a Just Coal Transition Forum, which I heard has been launched by the ETP and the World Bank. So this is adding to the partnership, and this is adding to the specificities that we manage to coordinate much more and successfully than we do, and we can show that it's doable. So we really have to do it everywhere. Such a Just Coal Transition Forum is here to capitalize on global experience we call phase-out program, and again deliver coordination services. And it's of course really instrumental to work on that. There is also some work in the Philippines, notably with the regulator on energy regulation and working with the Energy Regulatory Commission of the Philippines, which is very important. Of course, you all know that we are working on just energy transition partnerships. France and the AFD notably are, for instance, active in the South African one. Our teams, and I have a few colleagues there which are working day and night on this, are also working to set up the agenda, notably in Vietnam, in Indonesia. This partnership, this South African partnership, is here to support the work in the countries, led by the countries, to be able to implement those just energy transition roadmaps. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Matilda. Thank you for touching on some of the activities ETP is conducting. That's much appreciated. And you really captured both challenges and opportunities in the energy transition in the region. So next, we're absolutely privileged to be joined by the Honourable Ken O'Flaherty, the COP26 Regional Ambassador to Asia Pacific and South Asia from the FCDO, who will deliver a keynote speech. So His Excellency Ken O'Flaherty was appointed to the UK's government COP26 Regional Ambassador to South Asia and South Asia in March 2020. His remit was expanded to cover the Caribbean and small island developing states in May 2022. The COP26 Regional Ambassador works closely with the COP26 unit, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and other stakeholders to help develop regional and country level support for delivery of COP26 outcomes and the Glasgow Climate Pact. I stood up to get away from the echo, but absolutely honoured to welcome you here today, Ken. Please.
Thank you, John. And I might stay standing because I found in other venues that makes it a bit easier for the audio. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to see some former friends and colleagues and also to be meeting new advocates for the energy transition in Southeast Asia. As you know, this has been a particular focus for the UK presidency of COP26. I have spent a lot of the last 2.5 years traveling across Southeast Asia talking about the energy transition. And I think one of the big takeaways I'm taking from this event here at Sharm el-Sheikh is that the energy transition is no longer in doubt. There is recognition from governments all over this region and indeed across the world that the energy transition needs to happen, is in the interests of the populations and countries of Southeast Asia. And I think the question now is the speed. And I think it's in all our interests to try to help that speed accelerate in coming months. And of course, the global coal pipeline globally has reduced by 75% since the Paris Agreement in 2015. And that's bringing the end of new coal power very much within our sight here at COP27. At COP26, we saw an unprecedented number of countries from this region committing to no new coal, whether that would be Brunei, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, and of course our partners in Vietnam endorsing the global coal to clean power transition statement. And I think the collapse of the global coal pipeline and the rise of commitment to no new coal are progressing hand in hand. But the IEA is estimating that the global transition to clean power needs to be 4 to 6 times faster than at present if we are to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. So there is a lot more for all of us to do. And looking to what we have done in the UK, a consistent thread in our own energy transition has been making not just the environmental case for energy transition, but the economic case, bringing in our finance ministry, or the treasury, as we say in the UK, but also the business sector, working hand in hand. Today, the falling costs of renewables and of storage dramatically undercut fossil fuels, and in particular coal, when it comes to electricity generation. Solar costs are down by 85% over the last decade. Onshore wind costs are down by 56%, and offshore wind costs are down by 48%. Clean power is the economically sensible thing to do, and it is a growth industry worldwide. Governments that invest now will be positioning their economies for greater growth over the coming decade. It will position them at the forefront of the most innovative countries worldwide, and those that fail to take this opportunity will, of course, risk losing competitive advantage in the years ahead. Such governments will also be supporting jobs. Investment in renewables delivers substantially more jobs than in the fossil fuel sector. IRENA reports that boosting investment in renewables would increase jobs in the sector to 42 million globally by 2050, so 5 or 4 times more than today. So the market is delivering change. We are working with governments across this region to accelerate that change, both in tackling the market barriers and building pressure on those who continue to finance coal projects which are contrary to international Paris commitments and, of course, are not in the economic interests of the countries which they're purported to be supporting. With the energy demand in Southeast Asia projected to increase by an average of 4.7% every year to 2035, it's critical for us to be supporting Southeast Asian countries in developing their countries on clean energy and accelerating the efforts to phase out coal. Now, unfortunately, this year we have, of course, seen the war provoked by Russia in the Ukraine, and which has led to rising energy prices across the world. But that's not a reason to go slow on the energy transition. Quite the contrary, we are seeing the need to act faster because diversifying our energy supplies, ending the reliance on coal and investing in renewables is precisely the way to ensure ourselves against the risk of energy dependency. So the UK has been a proud contributor to the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership alongside, of course, other donor governments and other philanthropy. Over the last 2 years, the ETP has already delivered what we think is an impressive number of transformational technical assistance to accelerate the energy transition away from coal in its 3 target countries in Southeast Asia, so Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. And the partnership has a really ambitious and exciting program of work going forward, as of course we've just heard from Mathilde. In Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, the ETP works in synergies with the Energy Transition Council, or ETC, that the UK established under our COP26 presidency. ETC is a multilateral platform with over 40 government and institutional members, including 4 Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, Laos, Philippines, and Vietnam. And its main aim is to connect the international political, technical, and financial leaders to developing countries facing clean energy transition challenges and opportunities. We do that through a dialogue process at ministerial, national, and working level to expose clean energy priorities across a range of thematic themes and find, tailor, and implement practical solutions to accelerate that transition. So the ETP and the ETC are working hand in hand in these countries, and that's created more opportunities to amplify respective programs. And we're developing deeper, longer term, and well-collaborated collaboration in partnership with host governments and local stakeholders. That includes reciprocal responsiveness to the clean energy priorities articulated in both forums. And just one example, the ETC launched a rapid response facility in March last year, which is delivering fast-acting technical assistance. It's responded to at least 4 requests from Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam for projects on new technologies, on regulatory support for smart grids, energy storage systems, marine planning systems, and offshore wind regulatory support, particularly around permitting. But we're also clear this is not an area where just governments or philanthropies can provide all that's needed. It's clear that massive levels of private investment will be essential to deliver the energy transition over the next decade. We expect Southeast Asia to continue to drive the global economy in the year ahead, and that presents real opportunities for investors, which we're encouraging them to seize. After Glasgow, the UK has continued to mobilise action. We're determined to do the same following COP27 and the end of our COP26 presidency, and we're very much looking forward to further close partnership with the Southeast Asia Energy Transition Partnership as we drive forward a clean energy transition. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for all your work on this area, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing about what your perspectives are on this important agenda. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ken. There was a lot of positivity in your message, a lot of hope that we can glean from that, a serious amount of reality, a focus on speed that we need to get moving, and it's great to talk about the collaborations between ETC and ETP. The interventions you mentioned regionally from the RRF were all picked up by ETP, and we're delivering great work together there. So thank you very much. I think we're going to have a quick change around of seats as we go into our panel discussion. So thank you very much to our keynote speakers. I'm going to sit down this end, sir, because of the echo. Okay, so then the next part of our event, we move into a panel discussion. In this panel discussion, we will focus on the current state of play with regards to coal in Southeast Asia. And we're joined by 3 prestigious panelists working in the region. So on behalf of the DG of Electricity, from the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Indonesia, we have Mr. Pramudia. Mr. Pramudia serves as the Deputy Director under the Director General of Electricity and leads the MEMR's task force for Indonesia's net zero emissions roadmap, as well as a roadmap for Indonesia's early coal-fired power plants retirement. Next to Mr. Pramudia, we are joined by Dr. Tang Te Guang. Dr. Guang is the Director General, Department of Climate Change, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, or MONRE. Dr. Guang was appointed as the Director General of Department of Climate Change, MONRE, in Vietnam in 2018. Dr. Guang joined MONRE first in 2008 as the Head of General Department of the Administration Office and has served a number of roles within the ministry, including Deputy Chief of Staff and Secretary to Minister, Chief of Staff and Spokesman of MONRE. And last, but certainly not least, we're joined by Mr. Abhishek Baksa. He's a program lead of Climate Investment Fund Accelerating Coal Transition, also known as CIF Act, and JETP engagement. So Abhishek leads the CIF's Act investment program, along with CIF's JETP engagements in South Africa and its technical assistance facility for clean energy investments. So without further ado, we'll enter into the panel discussion. So the first question, Mr. Pramudia, would you mind if I come to you first? So I understand you have a slide set. So the question that the slide set will talk to is, can you explain the process and challenges of developing an early coal phase-out roadmap and some of the decision-making that goes into developing such a strategy?
The first, I would like to say thank you for inviting us in this discussion. Regarding the coal retirement, actually last year, before COP26, we already canceled more than 8 gigawatt coal-fired power plant, cancel the project. And for the what next, how to reduce the CO2 emission, Indonesia commit to do the early retirement, but in conditionally. Based on the new regulation, presidential regulation number 112, in that regulation, the state that we will make the roadmap for the early retirement for the coal. That's our Indonesia commitment, how to reduce the emission. And we have also strong commitment with the Paris Agreement, not only the NDC, but we already submit the enhanced NDC to the IPCC, while the first target is only 29% to reduce the emission by 2030. But the new NDC, the enhanced NDC, we will reduce up to almost 32% by 2030. May I present the next slide? Is it okay? Okay, next slide, please. This is the slide show what the real action we have been done in Indonesia. We already canceled the project more than 8 gigawatt coal-fired power plant. That will cut the emission about 65 million ton of emission yearly. Next slide. This slide show us the capacity of the coal-fired power plant. This is only the pipeline project, no the new project actually, only pipeline project. And beyond 2030, we can see in the slide that the coal-fired power plant capacity will reduce because the end of the contract or the end of the lifetime of the coal-fired power plant. And then we can see the emission in the right side. The emission will be going down rapidly with the retirement of the coal-fired power plant. So the power sector in Indonesia will be zero emission, not net zero, but zero emission before 2060. If we want to do the early retirement, I will show us what is the condition to achieve the early retirement in the next slide. But in this occasion, I want to share the information that right now Indonesia has rapidly growth for the smelting industry, for nickel and cobalt. We know that the nickel and cobalt is a product to support the energy transition, how to produce the batteries for EV, for battery energy storage for the system, electricity system. So because the smelter need a huge amount of power, so we try to find out the renewable resource to fulfill the electricity. But in some location we have challenges. What the power plant source of the energy. So in some place we still need the coal for a while to supply the smelter. Next slide. Sorry, previous slide. In this slide shows Indonesia has rapid growth of electricity demand. I think the same number with ASEAN or South Asia, about 4.7% demand growth until 2060. So to fulfill the demand, we need more additional power capacity. In this side, in one side, we reduce the capacity of coal-fired power plant. In other side, we need to add more capacity, of course, with renewable. In our policy, beyond 2030, we only develop the renewable energy, and maybe close to 2040, we need some nuclear to fulfill the base load power plant. Okay, this is the last what I want to show us. There are 4 conditionally we need to do the early retirement. The first is after the grid substitution is built, we can do the early retirement. Means that we need to maintain the reliability of the power system because we need to maintain our industry to operate sustainability. And then the second is to ensure of the just transition. There should not be any negative social impact when we do the early retirement of the coal-fired power plant. The third is we have to make sure the price will be affordable for our economic, for our industry, for our people in Indonesia. And the last is we have to make sure the confirm of international financial support. That's very important thing. For information, right now we are discuss with the IPG to discuss about the energy transition, how the international support can support Indonesia in early retirement and also to invest the new plan with renewable. I think that's all my presentation regarding the coal-fired power plant, the coal-fired early retirement of coal-fired power plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramudya. Lots of challenges ahead, but congratulations on how far Indonesia has come since COP26. There were some significant announcements last year, and I think coming up next week in G20, we're expecting some more announcements. So you listed very well the challenges there. There's a long way to go, but congratulations on the government so far. Okay, next we'll go over to Dr. Guang from Monterey. So, Dr. Guang, what are the challenges Vietnam faces in reducing its coal fleet? And what would it take for Vietnam to increase its ambition in replacing coal even faster?
Okay. Vietnam is one of the active countries in the Southeast Asia in the transition of energy. Sure. No, it's all right. Skip. In our commitment in COP26, Vietnam is very determined to reach net zero by 2050. But in order to do that, I think one of the key activities is to transit our energy. Vâng. Vâng. According to the report by the GWEC, the total capacity for offshore wind energy will reach 93 gigawatt globally. So lower, 1.8% lower compared to 2020. However, it raised the total capacity for the offshore, for the wind energy to more than 800 gigawatt. And increased totally by 12.5%. Yeah, Vietnam with a long coastline had a huge potential for offshore wind power. With the long offshore wind, if we exploit all the potential, then we can generate around 600 gigawatt. Vietnam just recently adopted a national climate change strategy to 2050. It also consider a low emission development plan. And also, we just recently submit our updated NDC. Specifically, in order to reach net zero by 2050, we aim to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 43.5% compared to the BOU by 2030. In order to do that, we are supported by the ZP, similar to Indonesia. We are also in a negotiation process with the ZP, with the G7, and hopefully by the end of this year, we are able to have a political declaration on ZP. So in order to implement the ZP and also the energy transition process, there are several challenges we managed to identify. First of all, it's about technology to help to transition to cleaner energy. Yeah, so for the offshore wind renewable energy, the government is trying their best to lessen the regulation to develop the projects. However, due to the unstable nature of the renewable energy, Vietnam need other source of energy to stabilize the base load. So it is necessary for us to cooperate with other countries to produce, for example, the green hydrogens, CCS, carbon storage and capture. So that's the challenge for the technology. So together with the technologies, we also need the resources to be able to fasten up the process. So we need support from the other partners, from all the international community. Also, we need to take into account the just aspect of the energy transition. Currently, Vietnam has around 70,000 people working in the coal mining industry. And the re-employment and also the education and training for the new labor force is quite difficult. And also we need the participation from private sector, especially on the access of technology, on to transfer of technologies from different countries. So I think the main challenge is between the private sector, between the enterprise side on the technology transfer. And also the technologies compared to the base level is quite new. So that's why finance is another key issue for the early retirement of coal-fired power plant. Normally the coal-fired plant takes around 30-40 to retire. However, currently in our energy structures, we managed to reduce the contributions of a coal power fire plant, and also increase the share of the wind and solar energy. Also, in order for the early retirement of coal power fire plant, then we need some sort of compensations for the owners. And also for other projects that currently in the pipeline, we need some sort of incentive, some sort of technology for them to transit. However, even with those challenges, Vietnam is still determined in our greening road to reach net zero by 2050. For example, Vietnam just commit on the coast phase down commitment and also on the methane pledge. Yeah, and also we will try our best to implement those commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Guang. Very insightful. So I'm going to move straight on to the next question. So given the answers we've received, I might rephrase this a little bit. The question is, what, in your view, is the greatest impediment in implementing the government's coal phase-down plans in Southeast Asia? We'll come to that in a moment. Sorry. Okay. First, let's go to Mr. Abhishek. Okay. At SIF, you lead the Accelerating Coal Transition Act Investments Program and Just Energy Transition Partnerships JETP engagement in South Africa. This is fascinating work, and I'm sure you have many, many great insights. Could you share some of these insights on the JETP model and how it can deliver finance in Southeast Asia? And we've just heard the discussions ongoing in Vietnam and Indonesia on this.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here, so thank you for having me. Great discussion so far. I'll try my best. Before I get into the JETP side of things, let me give a brief introduction of who we are at the Climate Investment Funds. We are one of the oldest and largest climate finance delivery mechanisms in the world. We have a funding envelope of close to $11.5 billion, and we have been in operation for around a decade and a half, or close to 15 years now. We have supported countries, over 70 low-income and middle-income countries in areas such as clean energy, resilience, forestry, and of late, we have launched the coal transition program that was mentioned. We work exclusively through 6 partner MDBs, or multilateral development banks. These are AFDB, African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, EBRD, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank Group, including IFC. What we have to offer is concessional finance, which is financing that comes at very low interest rates or extremely long tenors. And we always co-finance and blend with MDB owned resources. What it does is it lowers the cost of capital, it alleviates or mitigates specific risks, it facilitates thereby participation by private sector, and then in the process scale up impact on the ground. So that's where we come from, that's the experience that we bring. For the last couple of years, we've been working on the ACT, or the Accelerating Coal Transition Investment Program, which was launched at COP26 in Glasgow. We have raised around $2.5 billion for support offered to countries like India, Indonesia, South Africa, and the Philippines to support their coal phase-out ambition. Now, given that role, given that we are governed by a number of members of what we now know as IPG, or International Partners Groups, such as UK, US, Germany, Canada, France, and so on, it was a natural sort of ask when we were requested to play this convening role of the Secretariat in South Africa for the JETP engagements. So we have been engaged in the process for the past, I would say, close to 18 months or so, before 6 months from before Glasgow was signed. And we helped throughout the process. Initially, it was a political process, and then in the last year or so, it has become a technical process. And the goal was to deliver what we call the JET investment plan that was released by President Ramaphosa last week on Friday. So now going back to the question with that hopefully helpful context, there are some key elements that are part of or co-ingredients of a JETP or model. And I think that hopefully answers the question of how can it facilitate financing. And these 5 key elements are as follows. Number 1, the nature of it is premised on a country setting up an ambitious pathway. It could be in the form of your enhanced NDCs, it could be in any other form depending on the sector and so on. But you are defining your ambition. Number 2 is translating that ambition that you have defined, be it in terms of an enhanced NDC, into a set of strategic priorities or action areas. And then you present this in the form of a coherent plan, which one can call investment plan, which is what we are calling in the case of South Africa. Then number three is on the donors or the contributor side of things, where once you have those, you start coordinating a response, which means you bring together different stakeholders, different funders, partners, multiple countries, and here you have France, Germany, and so on. You bring together philanthropies where you can, and try to mobilize resources to support the country's ambitious pathway. Number four is once you have done that, you have mobilized a serious amount of resources. So you are achieving a certain scale in response to what the country is committing to deliver in terms of its ambitious pathway. And finally, once you have achieved that scale, you have hopefully delivered impact on the ground in each of those areas that you have identified in the investment plan. So from my experience, I would put it as these 5 key ingredients or milestones that help you achieve or get on a pathway to achieving that scale of financing that is needed to meet your long-term goals. And again, just to repeat, they are, number 1, you're defining your ambition. Number 2, you're translating that ambition into a set of priorities or action areas. Number 3, you're coordinating a response. And number 4 is you're achieving scale. Number 5, ultimately you're delivering impact on the ground. All of this is premised on a country-led, country-owned process every step of the way, where you are working with key stakeholders in the countries to develop these, identify these priorities, develop an investment plan, work through the financing communities to come up with a package, and so on. And so that's a key critical ingredient of this whole model. Let me stop here, but I'm happy to come in later on. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Very, very, very insightful. So I'll put this question to the panel. Feel free to answer anybody who would like to. And I think in the context of JETP, it's a very pertinent question. So what, in your view, is the greatest impediment in implementing the government's coal phase-down plans in Southeast Asia? So what is maybe the single biggest challenge that is faced, and perhaps how do we overcome this? Mr. Abhishek?
Thank you. I think there's not one there. I'm sure there are many, but I would perhaps pin down to 2. One is to bear in mind that the JET ambition is much beyond the JETP negotiation or the JETP agreement or the declaration that IPG or a set of donors get into with a country. If we take South Africa's example, the overall ambition is close to $85 or so billion, and the JETP contribution, as you may have seen, is close to 10% of that. What it does is it provides that down payment or that kickstart that you require to get down that ambitious pathway, which also means that there is a long way to go for the remaining amount of money that you need to meet the JET ambition. So the first challenge would be to identify modalities to mobilize that gap, that financing gap that exists between what is on offer and what is needed to deliver. And finally, the second thing is it comes down to implementation. So we could have a great JETP IP or a JET IP, but if we are not able to implement on the ground, then that sets a track record, and then that can, of course, potentially affect your fundraising, financing modalities. So I would say there are 2 big challenges. One is the question around how you finance the gap. And second is how do you ensure that an implementation model is effective enough to be deployed to deliver on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else like to comment on the challenges of coal phase down? Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. Just to add my explanation in the previous presentation, actually, for the utility, our utility company, we already PLN, we already stopped to develop the new coal. But as I said, we have the smelter industry growing rapidly recently. That will produce the battery, produce the steel with the nickel, where the location is far away from the existing grid. In the isolated area. So the smelter need a huge amount of power, not enough renewable there to supply the smelter. So I mean, the challenge is how to provide the electricity without coal there. So, but in our regulation, in the presidential regulation, we already make a restriction for the emission. Uh, if any coal smelter, if any smelter propose the new coal power plant, it could be allowed, but it should be reduced the emission since 10 years after the commercial. Then the operation should be at least in 2050. After that should be decommissioning for the coal or repurposing using 100% biomass or ammonia or hydrogen. So the challenge, that's our main challenge right now. We will produce the batteries, but the resource of power for to running the smelter. Yeah, quite not easy to stop the new coal for the captive, not NDPL and our utility, but for the captive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A very interesting real-life example of the challenges of removing captive coal. ETP are set up to support in difficult challenges like this. It would be great to see if we can work together with the international community to try and find a solution to this difficult problem. Okay, Mr. Gong, would you like to answer? Okay.
But I think that Vietnam, similar to Indonesia and many countries in Southeast Asia, had very similar scenario and conditions. Maybe some countries may be in the forerunner, maybe some countries may be falling behind. However, we need to need to consider the active from large company in the renewable energy. And we had to identify the potentials for transitions in each country. For example, Vietnam had huge potential for the transitions. I think the key challenge is the resources, both in terms of finance and technology. And also, as mentioned before, we also need to take into account the re-employment, the social aspect of the transitions. These are the key challenges. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to our panelists for sharing so openly. The Energy Transition Partnership is here to support the governments in Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia with the energy transition, and we look forward to working together and trying to overcome some of these challenges in the future. Okay, so finally, I'd like to pass the floor to the ETP Fund Director, Ms. Serpa Yavanpa. Serpa has been based and working in Southeast Asia since 1990, initially with UNDP, but has worked and held many senior positions with the likes of ADB and the Global Green Growth Institute. She's driving ETP very much from the front, and under her leadership, we're determined to accelerate the energy transition in Southeast Asia. So Serpa, could I ask you to try to summarize and capture with some closing remarks? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Good. This brings our event to a close, and I owe a big thank you to our speakers. And I particularly want to congratulate our speakers for bringing such openness to the conversation. So when we started thinking about this seminar, we really wanted to bring out one particular point, which is that coal phase down energy transition is very much a possible pathway. It's a very much possible target. However, as we have heard, it's not without challenges, or it is not uncomplicated. So a lot depends on the geographical conditions in the countries and in the particular regions that we are talking about, where the demand for energy is. Depends on finance and cost of finance. So I'm very happy to hear from Papisek, for instance, that there are options for reducing the cost of finance. And we'd like to be part of that process as well, to bring in philanthropy resources and other options. Level playing field regarding policy environment is critical for bringing in the enormous amounts of private sector investments that we are seeking to bring energy transition to its fruition. And the grids play an incredible role. So the grids have become outdated. They are not able to integrate the variable energy right now. So again, ETP plays a role in this, for instance, through providing an engineering design for the Jamali, the main control center in Indonesia that serves electricity to some 160 million people. So, and most of all, the energy transition has to be fair and just process. And there was a mention of the 73,000 people that work in the context of the coal-fired power plants, and there are many, many more that work in the mining sector that are related to the energy transition processes and coal phase down in particular. Not only just the employees, but also the businesses, the schools, the social services, the municipalities. There's a lot of people in the formal and informal community that are standing to be affected by coal phase down. We have to ensure that these people are taken care of and their needs are addressed early. So ETP has approached the World Bank and other partners to set up a Just Coal Transition Forum for the region, to bring these communities and the community stakeholders in contact with one another, their peers in the region, and also globally with other transitional communities. The forum will provide a lot of educational services, integration services, coordination services, data management services, twinning arrangements with other transitional areas across the world. We very much look forward to this, and I'm very happy to also say that the Powering Past Coal Alliance has joined it. The German-funded JET project, which is the Just Energy Transition Project in the region, has joined it, and of course the World Bank ADB has indicated interest in joining that partnership. So it does harness all the partnerships, and it tries to bring sufficient technical assistance, resources, and also investment funds to provide the financing that is needed to move these community members to new livelihoods. So there's a lot of services there, and another feature of this forum is that it's going to use ETP's governance mechanism, which brings together all the funding partners of ETP and ETP's secretariat to deliver its services. So it's not creating yet another overhead, yet another secretariat, but will use the existing measures and processes. So without further ado, I just want to say that ETP is very proud of its partnership. The governments of United Kingdom, Germany, France, and now also Canada. An announcement was made just 2 days ago about Canada's contribution to ETP, as well as the incredible drive that the philanthropies are providing to the sector. So Sequoia Climate Fund, also represented here, IKEA Foundation represented here, and many other foundations that are participating, and we're looking forward to more of that partnership between philanthropies and governments, which it gives us a chance to combine the respective experiences and innovations. This is very important because it gives us a very unhindered decision making. It gives us a straight line vision to the targets, and therefore a very productive avenue to work with the governments. And I want to mention that we are very, very proud of our relationships with the government agencies and other stakeholders in our operational countries, of course with MONRE, but also with the Commission for Management of State Capital in Vietnam and other Ministry of Industry and Trade and other agencies, Ministry of Finance and so on. We are currently actually providing some support to CMSC, which is the state-owned enterprises ministry in Vietnam, for developing a roadmap to net zero emissions target for the government-owned coal-fired power plants. Is very important and pioneering work. We are also working with many important institutions in Indonesia. Of course, Papenas, our sort of planning ministry that provides us the legal coverage of our work there. With PLN, where I already mentioned that we have this important program that will kickstart the entire donor community to look at digitalization of the grids there. We are working together with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of State-owned Enterprises on important processes such as the financial implications of the government's own early coal retirement plan. So we hope to bring some knowledge inputs, and also, as John said, we would be very happy to look at some of the far away areas where energy is needed to try and abate the need for fossil fuel energy. So let me stop here and thank you everyone for being with us. We are very pleased to have had this opportunity to talk with you and also showcase what ETP is doing in the region, and let me thank the panelists. John, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so just to thank the panelists with a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining today. It's been a pleasure that you've all come. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you once again to the panelists, and we'll be convening outside for some refreshments. Thank you.